Rory Delap might be the craziest / weirdest player that the Premier League has ever seen. He was an otherwise mediocre relegation level type of midfielder who up until his 30s nobody really knew or cared about. But when he got to his 30s, everything would change because he joined Stoke, where he would become a cult hero due to one hidden talent that made him one of the most unstoppable and annoying players to deal with. Now, his hidden talent was his throw-ins because as a kid, he was one of the best javelin throwers in his country. His throw-ins with Stoke would become so unstoppable and iconic that even managers like Arsene Wenger wanted to ban the whole concept of throw-ins. I mean, this team and this throw-in would become so iconic that it rose to one of the biggest memes sayings in soccer history. The "can they do it in the cold rainy night in Stoke?" What's interesting though is that Rory Delap never really utilized his throw-ins until he got to Stoke, and that was when he was in his 30s. So throughout his whole entire career, he was just this regular old work rate, work hard type of midfielder until he got there when he was already in his 30s. He grew up in Carlisle and would come up to the Carlisle United's youth setup where he was a pretty highly regarded youth player, and he would get promoted to their first team when he got to 18 years old, and he would play the next 4 years there and even helped them get promoted to the championship. He was showing enough potential and talent at Carlisle United, so Derby County, who was at the Premier League at the time, would come in and sign him when he got to 22 years old. He would fit great with this team because Derby County, they were known to play this hard, combative type of football, and Rory Delap was exactly that, a hard-working midfielder who wasn't afraid to put a tackle in. His best season would probably be his third season, where he scored 8 goals, scoring some crucial goals against big teams, like a goal against Arsenal, and then 2 against Chelsea that helped him win 3-1, and then another goal against Manchester United. He would play 1 more year at Derby County, and then after that, he would transfer to Southampton. At Southampton, he would continue to prove himself to be this hard-working, average disruptor type of midfielder who might not have the craziest skill on the ball, though his work rate and stamina would make up for it. His work rate would help Southampton reach the FA Cup final where they would play Arsenal, where they would lose 1-0, though they still got the spot in the Europa League, as Arsenal already had their spot in the Champions League secured with their league. At Southampton, he was also known to score some absolute banger of goals, like this iconic goal against Tottenham, a bicycle kick, which won them the game 1-0. And then he had these 2 headers against Arsenal during their invincible era in the 80th and 87th minute, which gave them the lead 2-1, though Van Persie would score in the 90th minute to draw. In his 4th year there though, Southampton would get relegated, and he would play half a season in the Championship until he got sold to Sunderland in January, which got him right back into the Premier League again. With Sunderland, he would get to play in 6 games until he clashed heads with his teammate George McCartney in a game against Fulham, which broke his nose, and that meant that he was out until the next year. While he was out, Sunderland would get relegated, and they would bring in a new manager, the former Manchester United midfielder Roy Keane. Now, you would think this is a bit of a good news for Rory Delap because they're both kind of similar, right? Both Irish, both this hard-working, combative type of midfielder, but strangely enough, Roy Keane didn't really rate him. Since Roy Keane wouldn't play him, they would loan him to Stoke City, and in their first game, they would play his ex-team Sunderland. Though his luck with injury would not be that great here either, because he would break his leg in this challenge by Robbie Elliott, which caused him to miss the whole entire season. While Stoke could have just sent Rory Delap right back to Sunderland and not have to pay the fee, they would choose to keep him throughout the whole entire year and help him rehab. After helping him rehab, they would choose to sign him on a permanent contract, which, hey man, respect, because at this point he's in his 30s coming off back-to-back huge injuries. I mean, I don't know what they saw in him, but hey, it worked out. When they signed him, they didn't even know about his hidden talent with his throw-ins, and his manager Tony Pulis only found out through sheer coincidence in training one day. I mean, just watch this clip.
He comes over to me and says, "Have you seen Rory throw the ball?"
This is class.
I've gone, "No." So he goes, whoosh, and he throws her almost over the pitch. And I've gone, "Rory, where have you been hiding that?" He said, he threw for his county.
Now that they knew about his talent, they would choose to utilize this heavily in their team. especially in that year in the championship, where they would need everything to get back into the Premier League, which they would do because they would place second in the league that year. Now, when Stoke got promoted back into the Premier League, nobody expected them to hang around because this is 2009. The top four were Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United, and Arsenal, and they were just dominating everybody through their sheer talent and skill. And then there was Spain, who were dominating everybody using tiki-taka and skill and whatnot, and there was Stoke, who had one of the lowest wage budgets in the league, and quite simply just didn't have that much talent in their team. So many people had written them off that it got to a point where there was even a bookmaker who paid out the bet on them getting relegated right after they lost 3-1 in their opening game against the newly promoted Bolton. Which, if you can get a casino to pay out like that, I mean, dude, that's just crazy. Now, while on the outside looking in, this team just didn't have enough star power, just talent, or just skill in general to, really compete. But what they did have was physicality and sheer size, because they had some absolute units. They had Ricardo Fuller, who was a 6'3 striker, and then there was Mamadi Sidibe, another striker who was 6'4. Most of their team was 6 foot and above, which, yeah, they were just probably one of the biggest teams in the league at the time. Well, this team knew that they couldn't out tiki-taka or just outplay other teams in traditional sense, but they knew that if they just out physical and just used every physical advantage they had to their own, benefit, they had every chance of staying up, and that included utilizing set pieces the most they could, including throw-ins. They would make set pieces their identity. They would have 3 days of their whole entire week just focusing exclusively on set piece training. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays was just straight set piece training. So everybody knew their roles, whether they were getting across the near post, whether they were getting around the back, or whether they were holding their position. They practiced tons of different plays. For example, if Ryan Shawcross was getting across the near post as their play, they would have one of their units block their markers so he would get freed, and this would create this controlled chaos that they desired, which gave them this edge against other teams. And with this, they knew that as long as they could cause as much chaos in the box as they could, they always had chances to score. They would use this controlled chaos philosophy in free kicks, corners, and throw-ins. Though throw-ins is where they were best, with Rory Delap leading the way, as his throw-ins would cause other teams panic because these teams, they have never seen something like it. His throw-ins were very unique because while he didn't throw it further than everybody, he threw it flatter and faster than everyone. Now this was different compared to everyone else because while everybody would just loft the ball up into the air while they did throw-ins, Rory Delap would instead zip the ball right into his teammates. Now this, combined with the fact that his team was just quite simply bigger than every other team, and the fact that they would just practice straight set pieces multiple times a week, yeah, it made their throw-ins one of the hardest things to guard in the Premier League. It became so iconic that The Guardian would create this graphic that explained his throw-in. There's a box that explains his run-up, and then there's another box that explains his technique in throwing, where they describe it as this whip-like release, talking about degrees and trajectories, and there's even more information in other boxes. I mean, this just looks like a school project or school report or something like that, and sure enough, if you look at the bottom box, it says the source is Dr. Lintor of Brunel University. I mean, his throw-in was such an enigma that they had to have these university professors describing this throw-in. I mean, yeah, this era was something else, man. This throw-in would just become iconic and take the Premier League by storm. When you saw Rory Delap dry the ball with his shirt and use long time, this tactic would make Stoke one of the toughest teams in the Premier League to beat, and they just became everybody's bogey team. They were just physical, tough to break down, and when they got any set pieces, they would make other teams pay. There's even a Wikipedia section that listed, although not every, but a good amount of his assists that he got from just throw-ins. I mean, just look at these years, man. These Stoke years, he was getting some crazy number of assists just from his throw-ins. Rory Delap's first assist with the throw-in was a very important one, as it was a 98-minute goal from Sidibe, which won them the game 3-2. From then on, him and Stoke would go absolutely crazy from their throw-ins because out of their first 13 goals, he contributed to 7 of them just from his throw-ins. And good amount of them were very important to their wins. There was the 2 assist game against Everton where he got 2 assists just from his throw-ins, which almost single-handedly won them the game, though they would end up losing the game 3-2. And then there was the assist against his former team Sunderland to Ricardo Fuller, which won them the game 1-0. He would then have probably his most iconic throw-in ever because of just the reaction that it garnered against Arsenal, which won them the game 2-1. Now this throw-in would win them the game 2-1, but that wasn't what made this throw-in iconic. What made this throw-in iconic was the fact that Arsene Wenger would, after the game, would say that throw-ins, or his throw-ins in particular, was an unfair advantage, which, okay, fair, but then he would also follow that up with saying that throw-ins should be banned in general. Now this is a bit ironic because maybe about a decade later, his own Arsenal team, well, I guess he's not managing them anymore, would become set-piece merchants just like Stoke. So him getting mad about this, I mean, maybe it was just foreshadowing or something, I don't know, but yeah, that was pretty interesting. While they were going on this rampage just with their throw-ins, a bunch of teams would try unusual tactics themselves to try to stop this. Arsenal, for example, Wenger would try to change the throw-in rule so that he couldn't use a towel to try the ball. Then there was this iconic clip from Hull where the goalkeeper would kick the ball out for a corner instead of kicking it out because he didn't want to throw in. In the same game, they would even have a substitute that would warm up near Rory Delap whenever he tried to do a throw-in and to mess with him. And this would get them a yellow card, or as a substitute, a yellow card, which, I mean, yeah, they were just trying anything to stop this guy, man. A couple of years later, even West Ham would set up extra boards near the touchline where Delap would usually run up to try to mess with him, though this would not work out as his throw-in would have another assist this game to win them the game 1-0. Even Burnley would try a similar tactic against him, though just like West Ham, it wouldn't work out as Rory Delap would get another assist which would earn them a draw of 1-1 that game. Nobody that season though could really counter Stoke and their throw-ins, and they'll be very successful, at least compared to their expectations, as they'll get 12th with a quarter of their goals coming just from throw-ins. That season would start the era of the cold rainy night in Stoke era where they would just become everybody's bogey team. While his throw-ins wouldn't be as effective in the next couple of years, he would still be useful, and he would even help them reach the FA Cup final using his throw-ins by getting assists against West Ham, Brighton, and Bolton. By reaching the FA Cup final, they would qualify for the Europa League, where when they got to the Europa League, they would even get to the knockout stages, which was definitely probably one of the most craziest, unthinkable things to happen in that era. But yeah, Rory Delap became one of the most iconic cult hero type of players in Premier League history, especially during the Barclays era, I would say. And people would say that this was his throw-ins were better than corners because 1, there was no offside with his throw-ins, and 2, his trajectory made it that it was just more accurate than corners in general. Rory Delap's playstyle was definitely more unique and weirder than most other players, and that probably made him a cult hero just from, you know, a mediocre midfielder becoming just one day in his 30s just becoming unstoppable just from a throw-in. I mean, yeah, who could make that shit up? In my opinion, we need more unique players like Rory Delap because, hey man, at the end of the day, it's unique players like this that make the game interesting.